Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. If you are new here, I'm Lisa, and today I'm going to be showing you a video that I stumbled upon on TikTok. The video was posted earlier this year, and it features a girl with a pluralistic view who is discussing why so many New Agers are now turning to Christianity. Now, she definitely has her thoughts on it, and it reminded me of back when I was so deceived. There's a ton to unpack. And so I would love to hear your comments on this because I had all kinds of thoughts on this video. So let's get started. Okay, so I'm going to show you guys this video, and then I'm going to just show you pieces, and then we're going to talk about it. So let's put this on right now. Let's see.
I've noticed a huge influx in the amount of people converting from New Age philosophy into Christianity. And I've noticed a pattern with a lot of these people because I've read their stories and I've listened to some podcasts because I'm curious, like, what is it that makes people convert from one to the other? They're so vastly different. And there seems to be a commonality with the fact that a lot of the people who convert from New Age to Christianity were first not raised Christian. So I think this is important because if you're raised Christian, you already have a foundational understanding of the story of Jesus and the beliefs about him and that he's the bringer of salvation and yada yada. And a lot of these people also delved deep into New Age in a kind of toxic way, where they, relied on their crystals and they didn't get any answers without their tarot cards. And, they just kind of had a very unhealthy relationship with the tools that are affiliated with the New Age community. And so where I think the problem is and why this keeps happening, and I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but there seems to be this thing where they'll be in the New Age, they'll be deep in it, kind of living in a toxic relationship with the tools, and then they'll have an experience with Jesus. This is the commonality. They have an experience with Jesus. And after that experience, they're kind of left like, oh shit, like Jesus is real and Jesus is, speaking to me and connecting to me, and I want to seek this out more. And so then they go to the church for answers.
Okay, we're going to stop right there. So the first point that she makes is she believes that most people that go from New Ageism to Christianity didn't have a foundation in the church. I used to belong to a Facebook group, and it was a big one. It was like, I don't know, over 3,000 people. It was Doreen Virtue's group, and it was from New Age to Jesus. And I remember there were so many people in that group that they had already known Jesus and then somehow got into New Ageism. Everyone had kind of a different story and then would go back to him. And I remember one time I asked the group, I said, is there anyone in here that didn't know Jesus? And if not, like, what made you call out to him? And there were several people that answered me that said it was just part of their soul. Like, it was almost natural to cry out to him. There was a piece of their soul that was just like, a lot of them would have these demonic experiences where an actual demon, maybe it was, they had paralysis, sleep paralysis, and this demon would, come to them and they couldn't move. They're terrified, and then they would call out to Jesus. Different experiences. Also, she's talking about having, most of them had an experience with Jesus where they saw Jesus, and that is a lot of them, but there's also a lot of them that had a demonic experience. For me, I started feeling like things weren't right. Like the tarot cards would tell me something was going to happen. I remember I had this vision of this guy, and I thought I was going to end up being with this guy. And every tarot card that I would pull, and I mean like 8 in a row, in regards to this guy, it would be the love card, right? But I also had visions and lots of different signs, okay, pointing me towards this man. He would die. I had experiences that just always led me to pain, but it's like it would be spread out enough to where it would be hard to catch on. And so for me, I grew up in church. I always said this, I never prayed to the universe. I always prayed to God, as in Jesus. I just did these other things as well. So like I prayed when I would do my tarot cards, I would pray to Jesus for his protection. And then I think I also added like angels and guides. I think I did that. But so I was like trying to blend sorcery with my belief in Jesus. But here's the thing. I did not know the Bible. I read bits of it here and there. Usually when I was sad, maybe I'd read a little bit. I went to church, so we got some of the Bible stories. But unless you're really reading his word and you're following him and you're obedient to him, it is so easy to fall into deception. So I would disagree with what she's saying right here. I don't think that most New Agers don't know Christ before, and so they're just looking for something else. I think that a lot of them knew him when they were young, but they probably weren't following him like fully, because the spirit grieves when you sin. When you're really following Jesus, I feel like it's really hard to turn away from that. And if you do, I would say maybe something very painful happened. But I feel like it's when you really start to follow him, you do change. You are reborn. And so, I would disagree with her. I also had this friend, we used to co-lead yoga retreats together, women's retreats. And her portion was, she was a yoga teacher, and she would teach this yoga. And then I would create some of the curriculum, new age activities for them to do. And she found Jesus as well. And she did have a foundation when she was young, and then did like a blend like me. And then all of a sudden it's like, I don't know, we both felt called. Like I said, for me, it was different. I surrendered knowing something was wrong. Like I felt like there was a demonic spirit tricking me. Something was wrong. I would have these tarot cards, these manifestations, these visions, hearing voices, and they would seem good. And then something would happen later down the road, and it was like unbelievably awful. And I wouldn't make the connection that it was literally demonic spirits. To me, it was a lesson, somehow this was a lesson that I had to learn. And that's a very common viewpoint for New Agers. Okay, so let's watch what else she has to say.
And the problem is that Jesus is not necessarily in the church. Because I was raised Christian, and left Christianity, left all faith in God, and was kind of atheist for a while. And then I started having mystical experiences that connected me to New Age and esoteric and mysticism. And then throughout the years, I also reconnected with Jesus. And I was in that same place. Like, does this mean I need to go back to church? And I tried that. I really did. But that was not what I was being called towards. And over time, the more I prayed on it and the more I asked God, reveal to me, is the Bible 100% immaculate? Am I wrong? Is the church right? Did they have it right all along? That was never the answer that I was shown. I was constantly shown no, I'm taking you through this as you're ready.
So here's the thing. When you don't believe that the Bible is the word of God, and you're involved in these new age practices which open doors to demons. I prayed to Jesus, to God, and I would hear voices that would tell me things that would go against God's word. You have to be discerning of spirits. And if you believe that the Bible is God's word, and you look at that, and that's where we really need to use our discernment. If you're hearing something and it goes against this, it's not from God. And we don't live in a world where there are no devils and demons. We don't. But I don't think this girl is considering that. Like, I didn't used to consider that, because she's doubting the Bible. And I understand that because I used to be that way. But it's, oh my gosh. And what I would tell her is what I would tell myself back in that day. New Agers, people that they go so deep spiritually, they are seeking, okay? Seeking information. And I wish I would have told myself, read the Bible. Read the whole Bible, Lisa, because you never did. I know you think you have more of an open mind, but read the Bible and then study the evidence of the resurrection of Christ. Lee Strobel, the author of Case for Christ, he was an atheist, right? And he was so agitated when he found out that his wife, who was agnostic, became a Christian. She started following Christ. He loved his life, he said. He said, I watched an interview with him where he loved it. He drank, he used foul language, and he just did whatever his flesh wanted to. And he was a journalist, and he even studied Darwinism, and he literally starts investigating this case for Christ to pull the rug from under his wife. He didn't want his wife to be a Christian. He was literally thinking of divorce, but he's like, you know what? I'm gonna just use my journalism skills, and I'm going to show her. So he went on this major time of research, right? Where he looked for the evidence of Jesus and his resurrection. And he comes out a Christian. The evidence is undeniable. I actually wrote down, because I was watching this interview, Jay Warner. Okay, so Jay Warner was a cold case homicide investigator, and he actually also investigated Jesus and his resurrection, became a Christian. The evidence is completely there. And I wrote down this quote that Lee Strobel said. He says, denying the existence of Jesus doesn't make him go away. It merely proves that no amount of evidence will convince you. So I feel like the thing that happens is people that are exploring these other spiritual paths, they're looking for signs. They're looking for things outside of the evidence that God gave us. And God will, He will talk to us. Sometimes He will. But sometimes sometimes His quiet, His silence speaks volumes. I will tell you, and I've told this story before, but it's worth telling again. It was after my divorce that my faith really got tested. And this is when I would go into the new age. But he did talk to me a few times. My father had left. He had married this woman. I wasn't seeing him anymore. I ached for a male figure to be in my life. And so I'm praying to God at 12 years old for a boyfriend. I wake up the next morning with a knowing that I'm going to marry a man named Brian. Okay, 19 years old, marry Brian. I think that God has given me a gift. Okay, so Brian, though, did not have the fruit of the Spirit, leaves me for another woman. At 28, I'm left alone. Okay, I'm devastated and I'm spiritually confused because I always looked at that as God gave me a gift. Okay. That was a supernatural experience that happened and I deemed it as God. But guess what? I never followed what his word told me. I didn't. I slept with my husband before marriage. They say the Lord wants us to be equally yoked. I did ask him, do you believe in God? And it was like, oh yeah, I believe there's something, bigger. It wasn't, he wasn't a follower of Jesus. And I went, okay, he has a belief in God, I did not follow what his word said. If I would have followed his word, I could have been like, well, wait a minute. This doesn't align with this. If I would have known the devil doesn't play fair, he doesn't care if I'm a child, he can talk to children too. Even though I was praying, the devil does not play fair. And this is the thing, this is the reason I always talk about demons. I don't go home and have fear. I'm completely free and delivered of all of that. I sleep like a baby. I do not have fear of anything like that. But I talk about the existence of demons because people tend to have these spiritual experiences and they automatically are like, oh, it's God. And that is not necessarily what it is. We have to know his word to discern that. And so, anyways, I'm upset after my divorce and I'm screaming at God, and I'm saying, why can't you talk to me now? Why can't you talk to me now? I don't understand why this has happened. And I'm thinking, wasn't God for marriage? I was so confused. My 5-year-old comes into the room, and I'm sorry for anyone who's heard this story 100 times, but it's true. And she says, word for word, this is your opportunity to stand up for yourself. God is Lord, and he is mighty, and he can fight for you. And then she goes back to normal, okay? After that, it would suffice me for a little bit. I would go to church. I would even get baptized. But then I got real angry at God. I felt like my husband's out gallivanting around with this other woman. And then here I am hurting, okay? So I would go see my first tarot card reader. And the first thing she says was, what I'm hearing is you need to go back to God now. She goes, we all get angry at God, but you need to go back to him. She didn't say universe. She used the word God. And I believe he was trying to stop me from making a grave mistake. I was about to embark on New Ageism fully. 10 years, I would allow the devil to wreak havoc over my life. And don't forget, it took me 2 years to be prayed for because I had opened the doors to demons. So when this girl, she's talking about all of these mystical experiences, and what she's hearing is that this book this is not true. She's going to church. Those are demons. If it's going against the Bible, if it's going against that, the demons do not want us to get close to God. And if we're going to allow that deception, but if she would read the Bible fully, just like if I would have, there's no judgment to this girl because I was this girl. So I will say that I have a heart for this girl, and I feel like there's some hurt there. Like I said, I don't know what happened, but I just could see that deception now. And if this girl would just read the Bible and then look into the evidence, see why so many atheists turn to Jesus after exploring this. John Burke, I've mentioned him. He was agnostic, an agnostic engineer, and he studied 1,500 different people who had near-death experiences. 1,500. And now he's a Christian pastor. Okay? And he even says these people that died that were from all different parts of the world and with different religions and beliefs had experiences that actually aligned with the Bible. Okay? And he tells stories of even hellish experiences. That not everybody's going to heaven. He told stories where people actually turned their life to God because they went to hell. People that didn't even believe in that. And so it's worth, if you're going to explore all of these different beliefs, it is worth reading the Bible, the full Bible, and then studying the historical evidence, because the evidence is there, and there is evidence beyond the Bible. There is evidence from people that weren't Christian, from ancient times. Josephus is one. He was Jewish, that a lot of scholars reference, some of the things that he said, but there's just so much evidence for this. But this part makes me sad because she's saying that she really tried, and I know that she really feels that. I had felt that too, but I would do everything but read his word. Okay, so let's see what else she has to say.
But the problem is when a person leaves New Age with no foundational belief of Jesus' understanding of Christianity, they come in, they're excited, they're pumped up, and not only that, they get so validated. Like if you come to a church and you say, yeah, I used to be New Age, but then I had this experience with Jesus and now I'm here because I don't know, maybe I want to be a Christian. They will swarm you. They want that so bad because they so badly want to discredit anything in the New Age to confirm that they have the one and only path to salvation. And so they swarm these people and they validate them and they encompass them and, they just suck them into their community, which is great because a lot of people have never experienced church community and they can be very loving and very compassionate and there for each other in their spiritual journeys. So that's like a new experience in itself.
Okay, so I will tell you that has not been my experience. I feel like I had so many friends in the New Age. I did a lot of yoga. I met friends from there. I just had such a community of people. And I will tell you that when I turned my life to follow Christ, I have lost so many friends. It's been such a lonely path. I spent my first quarter at Bible college, and I made a couple connections, but I'm not invited out to go do things a whole lot with people. Like I went to a church, had a singles, they had like a singles night that they would do. I went to a few of those. I went to a church camping trip. And then I've actually met the most like real connections through deliverance, ironically, but I really don't have like a solid like church community like she's imagining it. And I will tell you, I feel actually kind of lonely and out of place because I like played with some dark, dark things, that some people from the church have never touched, and so you're kind of trying to find where you fit in, and some Christians don't believe in deliverance, and I'm sorry, but that's what happened. There's no denying the way that my body was shaking and my response and my body contorting and things speaking through me while I was getting delivered. And so you're kind of trying to find your people. So I would 100% say this is not how this girl is depicting, leaving the new age for Jesus. It actually has been lonely, and I wouldn't do it if I didn't know from the depths of my being that he is the one true way to salvation. Because there have been some times of, I don't really want to say suffering because it was all worth it. I don't even look at it like that, but it's been lonely. It's been a transformation. There's been times where I felt rejected. I talk about demons a lot. Come on now. I look like a weirdo. My life has completely changed from my little yogi, free, hippie self that I used to be. And it's not at all what this girl is describing. Also, my friend that I mentioned earlier, the one who was a yoga teacher, she left yoga. She has had church hurt. She has felt out of place. She just found a new church, and I think she's found her people. I think God has led her to a church that's going to be way nourishing for her. But it has been hard for her too. And same thing, she said she left a community of people. She lives in another state now, or I think we would be hanging out all the time. But it's not like this girl says, and it takes a strength to be a Christian. There is a real strength because you truly are set apart, and people will look at you like you're weird. If you're really following Christ, you will be persecuted. So I don't agree with this at all. I don't think that this is how it is. I think that the transition from New Ageism to Christianity can be very lonely. I have had many Christians that are very lovely to me and kind, like she said, and compassionate. But as far as like real connections and friends, that's going to take time. And so I don't see it the same way she sees it. Okay, so let's watch this next part.
What I've noticed is a lot of these people that convert, you see their language shift. They're talking about the blood of the lamb and the enemy is out there and deceit and sin. And it's like all this language and verbatim that is tied to the conditioning of how Christianity became this controlling dogmatic religion that, the Catholic Church and Rome used to manipulate people for thousands of years, they get sucked into that same ideology, that same belief. And
I'll say it again. New Agers. They are some of the more spiritual, hungry people. I remember when I was in the New Age reading books after book, and you're reading all about these different ideologies and belief systems, and that is a thing that people are going pretty deep in their research and trying to find spiritual truth. When we have these moments, which, like we talked about before, Jesus comes to us, we have an experience with a demonic spirit where the only name that will make that spirit go away is Jesus, okay? Or you have an experience where it's like me, where it wasn't just one experience, but over time I start seeing, hey, something isn't right here, okay? And you turn to Jesus. God knows how to draw us. He knows how to draw us, okay? And we now are like, oh my gosh, you're the truth. So what do? We don't just completely lose that hunger. We're hungry to know him. Oh my gosh, you're the one true God. You're telling me there's only one way. So now we're reading our Bibles. Now we're exploring that evidence. We're not looking aimlessly for random signs now. Now we're looking to his word and we're in it. So yes, we are saying things like the blood of the lamb and the enemy, because we understand the reality of it. I remember in that New Age group that I was in, people were hungry to learn, and they're asking, what's a good, YouTube pastor that I can watch? I mean, people were hungry to learn. They were recommending books and all kinds of things. You're going deep. Now we see who, what the truth is. And we want to know. So yes, our language changes, but not because we're brainwashed. It's because we are reborn. We are reborn, and it's such a different thing to grow up in church and just hear, stories, but not truly follow him. When you follow him, everything changes. It is a transformation, a death and rebirth. And I will tell you, it's interesting hearing her say sin. It took me back to this place. So I had this client when I was still in the New Age, and she drops off this book. And I've talked about this book in some of my videos. The book was Soul Care by Rob Reimer, okay? And this book was a book on deliverance. And he was talking about repenting of sins, okay? And I remember, I don't know if I saw it on the back of the book, somewhere in the book I looked at, I was like, sin wasn't a part of my worldview at that time. It wasn't part of my beliefs anymore. Once I got into the New Age, everything, I'm willing to bet this is what she kind of believes, because it's a very common premise for New Agers. But what she probably believes, and what, I used to kind of believe, was that I did believe in reincarnation. And so it changed from believing that I had just one life. I had believed in reincarnation, and you chose everything before you got here. Okay. So when bad experiences would happen, New Agers talk about dark spirits and energy, and you sage and to make sure, and you ask for protection. But we wouldn't give a whole lot of, I think, validity to that. You definitely wouldn't focus on it because you were like the creator and your thoughts controlled all of these things. So you kind of like stayed away from even focusing on that too much. But we never thought when bad things happened that it was anything but a lesson. Okay. So sin wasn't a thing that really existed. It was like, oh, this is like karmic, something I needed to learn. And you go on. There was no such thing as sin. And you're trying to, reach this point of enlightenment. So at some point you won't need to continue to come back, but everything was karmic. So she's looking at the word sin as like, ooh, like, and I definitely believe that it's demons. I know she wouldn't think that. I wouldn't have thought that I had demons. But I will tell you, and I keep saying it, I can't believe the peace I feel now. I can't believe it. I cannot believe it. And it really did happen once I fully got free. And when I fully got free, it's on my deliverance video, but I went to private appointments to get prayed for. But finally what had happened was I was on my knees and in my bedroom and just praying to God for him to deliver me. And I told him how sorry I was for doing all of these things. And then a few days later, I was at school actually getting prayed for to receive the baptism of the Holy Spirit. And I started shaking, crying, and I felt it wiped out. Just like in one slew. I can't even explain the feeling. It was unreal. And I've never felt the same since. Just free. So when I hear her talk, again, no judgment, because I will tell you, I understand. I was there, but after going through everything that I went through and understanding the reality of demonic spirits, these unclean spirits that will torment you and do anything to make you lose your salvation and not see God as the only way, not see Jesus as the only way. I really do actually, I feel for her so much. Okay, so now we're going to look at the next part of this. Let's see what she's got to say.
I have a feeling that same influx of people that went from New Age to Christianity are finally going to find themselves kind of where I'm at, where right in the middle, where you have a relationship with Jesus as your guide, as someone who's showing you the path and has, definitely deep wisdom. And I feel like is an ascended master, an evolved being that came here to teach us and guide us, but is also possibly not the only one. And that's not going to be the same guide for everybody. And that's where I think Christianity kind of is not right in the sense, because they think that they have the one and only soul path to God. And I don't believe that's true. In the case of medicine, there is never one medicine that will heal every single person of every single ailment, And so if you're growing up in the eastern part of the world, Jesus might not be the guide that you resonate with. And that might not be. And I'm not saying he can't be, but it's just, that's not the relationship you have to have with him. And so I think the problem is that people think that Jesus is in the church. And so they get in there and they get sucked in. And I have a feeling that those same people are going to start realizing that the church is pretty cultish and they are definitely a little bit brainwashed, and that, although they have really good intentions and a really big heart for God and service and love, I don't necessarily think that they have all the answers that all of us I know are deep down looking for. I think it's great explore and experiment. There's nothing wrong with this path, but I do, I have noticed this with those videos, and I'm not saying that New Age has all the answers either, guys. I am by no means claiming that this is the, end all be all too. Obviously, you can get very lost in the New Age, and there's a lot of woo-woo stuff, let's be real, and I get that, but Jesus has a lot of the answers, but there's a lot of truth and wisdom in the New Age, in these Eastern philosophies that have been coined the New Age. And I think we're sort of supposed to mend, the West and the East. And that's what this collective consciousness is coming to. That's what the time is coming to. But the pendulum typically swings back and forth until it slows down somewhere in the middle. And that's kind of my theory on why there's this influx of people shifting from one ideology to the other.
Okay, so the New Agers that I've met, and like I said, I was in this group, and it was thousands of them that really turned to Jesus. I've known some, and I still know them. There are some that have had experiences where Jesus has shown up to them, and they're kind of like, that's interesting. But they don't fully want to leave some of the things that they've gotten attached to. Astrology is a big one. A lot of people don't want to leave astrology. And so I have seen that where they're kind of like 1 foot in, 1 foot out, not wanting to be, I don't know, they have some preconceived notions that Christianity, like she said, is dogmatic, and we're all sheep and brainwashed. She didn't say sheep. She said brainwashed, but I can tell that that's kind of what she believes. She said it's cultish. So it's like we're following, blindly. And it's not true. And it goes back. I'm telling you, if all these people that say these things, if they would just read the whole Bible, study the evidence, I do not believe you wouldn't believe. Like, it's like, it's there. The evidence is there. And that's why you've got people like Lee Strobel, who was on a mission to prove Jesus, wrong, the evidence of him and his resurrection wrong, so he could get his fun sinning wife back, and he becomes a Christian. There's so much. This is the one true God, and yeah, and then, she said things about the church. I've known a lot of people that have a sour taste in their mouth about the church. And I think that Satan's going to infiltrate anywhere he can to get us away from God. And that's why we have to be equipped for that spiritual battle. Like, it's true in the Bible that really helps us. But like I mentioned earlier, my friend, she had some church hurt. She was not welcomed with arms wide open, and it really hurt her. It was really hard for her. And then she found another church, and it's such a different experience. And so I think for the people that are kind of turned off by the church, I think you need another church. But I also think, like I said, this girl probably doesn't believe in demons the way that I do. But again, it wasn't until I even turned my life over to God that I even knew that demonic spirits were present. Like, I had no idea. And so I remember there was this, in that New Age to Jesus group that I was in, there was this girl that was asking what to do because when she would go to church, so she left the New Age and sounded like she was just getting started with church. And during the worship music time, her lip would curl up almost like an animal, like a dog or a wolf, and it would curl up and she's asking this group, have you guys experienced this? I don't know what to do. This is happening. And, I'm in worship and it only happens during the worship time. And then every other time these demons get aggravated. Unfortunately, in that group, they did not believe in deliverance. They shied away from that. And so they did not encourage that. They actually were not for deliverance. And so sometimes I would see that, like, people asking, they would have these experiences and then the group was like, no. But that was one where this girl experienced that. So you can tell with this girl, that's talking, she obviously has a disdain for the church. And like I said, I've heard people say Jesus isn't in religion. Jesus wasn't for religion. And I honestly, I don't really even understand totally what that means. I don't even know how to respond to that because I'm sure you guys have heard that. I don't know what that means when people say that exactly. But if you read his word and you go by his word, I mean, in Acts, it talks about when Paul was on the mission, they would call Christianity the way. It was called the way. It wasn't called Christians or Christianity. It was called the way. And it was this sect that they called it from Judaism. These people left this to follow the way, the one true way to salvation. And that's in the book of Acts. Okay. So, you can say whatever you want about the church. I mean, but they have a belief. She mentioned dogmatic. Dogmatic, it's used as a negative term, but it does, some of its premise is believing in only one way. You believe something to be the absolute truth. I believe that Jesus is the only way to the Father, the only way to salvation. Yeah, but when she says that New Agers, she believes that pendulum is going to swing and they're going to come somewhere in the middle. I definitely do not think that the people from the New Age have seen the truth of darkness. They have truly woken up. The scales have been removed from their eyes. I'm telling you, I know New Agers always think that they're awake and everybody else is asleep. I think that people that leave the New Age for Jesus are some of the most devoted followers of Christ. I mean, they just love him so much and they see things from such a different lens because they understand that darkness exists, that spiritual warfare exists, that these unclean spirits can trick us. So I feel like they understand the fullness of what Jesus taught, the fullness of what the Bible says. I think that this girl, I hope that you guys will pray for this girl. I'm going to pray for this girl. It's really made me sad. And I think maybe that's why I decided to make a video on this. There were parts, I'm going to be very honest, she would say things and my initial reaction, I felt like, gosh, like, a little, maybe a little offended. And then it was like, Rem- remember where you were. I was this girl, and there's hurt there, I really believe that. And so I just pray. I pray for her. My prayer for her is that she will be open enough to read his word and really explore what the Bible says, and all the evidence that there truly is, that she will give some of this another shot and look at why do so many people go to him? People you wouldn't think. I think we don't realize how fortunate we are here too, like to be able to worship whoever we want, but there are people that die to follow Jesus today in this world. When she's talking about these different people from all of these different worlds, I met these different countries and places in the world. But I met this gal it was from a deliverance that I went to, like a gathering. It was that I've talked about it, the spiritual warfare course. And then they did a night of prayer and deliverance. Anyways, this girl came there and just to be a support and pray. Anyways, she has this like a Zoom meetup where these people from the Middle East, where was it? Oh, it was Iran. So these women will literally go on Zoom just to have her do a Bible study and prayer. And she says that they could get killed. Like it would be so horrible if it got found out. And she said it's like the lady trying to just touch Jesus's robe. And these women are endangering themselves to hear a Bible study and a prayer because they don't have the luxury that we have to worship anybody. Why do those people follow him when it's so dangerous? There's a reason. There's a reason. And I'm definitely a curious person. I'm so curious and I hunger for knowledge. And I hope that this girl, I hope she explores it. I really hope that she explores this further and maybe puts aside some of her judgments for the church and just gets into his word and really considers, what it says. I mean, and really, why are these people sacrificing their lives for this one? Why? Thank you guys so much for joining me for this discussion. I hope that you guys liked it. It just was a lot, when I was watching it and I was like, gosh, like I just want to share this and I want to talk about it. I want to talk about some of these things, some of these deceptions. And yeah, I love you. And I really would love to hear your comments on this because I'm still pondering it. You probably can tell I'm still just kind of marveling at this. It took me back to that space, but just kind of seeing, what this person thought about, you know, Christianity and even what seemed like maybe offense, right? The opposition of the belief of there's only one true way to salvation, and I know that that exists, right? Like I know that people feel triggered. People can get triggered when your view is just one way. So drop a comment below. Let me know what you think. What are you experiencing in your life, in your walk? Do you guys ever face opposition like this? I would love to hear. If you guys like this video, I'd appreciate a thumbs up. And if you haven't already, I'd love for you to subscribe. It really does help me out. It helps me to grow. Super small channel. But with you guys, it's definitely growing. I hope you guys are all having the most beautiful day. God bless.